Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. Founded in 2013, the EHL has become the college placement leader on the East Coast. Sit back and learn more about the next step in your junior hockey career.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin, and this is episode number 166 of the E-Show. On this week's episode, we feature an Original Six franchise and the Valley Junior Warriors. Jake Basile chats with Ryan McGrath as he prepares his EHL team for their move up to the North Division. McGrath and Sean Collins, the new head coach of the Warriors EHLP team, are busy preparing for the upcoming 23-24 season with a strong number of returning players coming back to the program for another year of development. This fall will mark the start of McGrath's fifth season in Haverhill, coming off of a year that saw his captain commit to Endicott College, an NCAA Division III program that just advanced all the way to the Frozen Four this past March.
Hello, E-Show. For today's Coach's Corner chat, we have Valley Junior Warriors head coach and general manager Ryan McGrath, who will enter his fifth season behind the bench for Valley. Coach McGrath spent a decade at the college level prior to returning to junior hockey, where he got his start in coaching. He is a native of Reading, Massachusetts, where he starred for their high school program back in his playing days. Coach, we thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Jake. I wouldn't tell people I was a star in my high school team. I was on the team, but certainly not a star.
All right. Well, we can keep that in though. We'll let the people believe that.
Okay.
So looking back at this past season with Valley, tough year standing wise, but you did have one of the younger teams in the league, and as the year went on, felt like the group really grew. So, what were some of your biggest takeaways?
You know, it reminds me every year how difficult our league is. Right, people just assume because it's not the USHL or the North American League that it's easy, and kids find out very quickly when they get here how hard it is to be successful in our league and how prepared you have to be in order to have a good season. So, you know, our biggest takeaway was, you know, really, you know, and especially moving. I don't want to jump ahead questions. Moving to the North for next year, but you know, really trying to figure out how best to have a team, build a team that can be successful in this league, because it's not an easy thing to do.
And as a coach, you know, what did you have to rely on to keep morale and motivation as high as possible, you know, even amidst some tough losses?
You know, well, the easiest way to do it is just, you know, remind the guys that every day, regardless if it's a win or a loss, college coaches are watching, whether they're watching in person or more often than not now they're watching online. So everything they do is being evaluated. So how they handle the wins and losses and try to stay even keel. We're big on them as, you know, staying even keel. Don't get too high, don't get too low, but act accordingly, because you're being watched and you're being evaluated. And even in a loss, you can still win over a college scout.
Yeah. So your team's best performances came in December and January, that 9-4-1 stretch. You took down the Avalanche, took down Lumberjacks, really good stretch for you guys. What do you think was the key in that good time period?
Well, we, you know, with the addition of Sam Bowes in October, and then of course Grayson Payne in January, you know, they did a really good job of helping us throughout that time. So getting solid goaltending really helped. I think, you know, hitting the December, we also, you know, we had that good Newington showcase right before break. So it got everyone excited over break. Everyone stayed in good shape. They stayed healthy. We got real lucky. We didn't get hit with any of the bugs that any of the other teams did at that time. You know, and then when we come back from break, we've always done the showcase out in Worcester with the Canadian teams that, you know, the late Coach Odessa would put on. And I love that, and I hope that they do it again, because it's a great way for us to play a couple of exhibition games, dress everyone, before we got to get back into league play. And I think it really set us up for success.
And we saw, obviously, Instagram was pretty on fire during that time period. Saw some fun videos like Coach Higgs kicking down the garbage pail. So how much fun was it as a group to kind of get those wins?
It was, of course, we always say that we're not about wins and losses, and we're truly about player development in college matriculation. But I'd be lying if I said it's not fun to win, right? And when we were in that time, everything seems to be, things smell better. The music is a little bit better, right? Everyone's happier. They're not so quick to fly off the handle if something bad happens. So, it was a really good, 6 to 8 weeks for us.
And your coaching staff is one of the best in the league. So having a guy like Coach Clardy with you this year, young coach, seems like he had just an unbelievable engine. What has he brought to the organization?
The better question is, what hasn't he brought to the organization? And he's a guy. 3 years ago, I told him, I want you to push pucks and not talk. And within 2 weeks, he started talking. He was saying the right things, and I then encouraged him to talk more. And he really, he does so much with our pre-scouts, our video. He's instrumental in the individual meetings with the players, and helping adjust their mindset or finding out, which skill each player wants to work on each month. We do monthly meetings with our players where instead of, because of course every one of our players needs to work on everything. And if you work on everything every day, you won't get much accomplished. So we try to once a month hyper focus on one thing. And when they get their downtime or their alone time, or we're owned by the rink, so our players have an unlimited amount of ice time, which is a pretty good perk of being a Valley Junior Warrior. They have the ability to go out there and work on that exact skill that they had identified in their meetings with Coach Clardy.
You touched on this earlier. The most important thing from this league and any organization is getting to the college level. Historic commitment this year for your organization. Dom Metro, the captain, going to Endicott, first commitment for the EHL to Endicott since 2016. What made him that player to kind of break that trend?
Dom's an athletic young man, and we all know that, right? He comes from an athletic family, and he played multiple sports, both at Arlington Catholic and at Hoosac. He also played baseball. But it's truly his focus and his drive to train. One of the reasons why Dom played for us his senior year at Hoosac was the COVID season, the pandemic season. So school often got shut down, and as soon as he got back home, he came and skated with us. So even though he was a 2-year guy, he was more like a 3-year guy. He was one of the only 2 players in the league this year that played in the college games 2 years in a row. And last year he got to play against Curry because we had a bigger roster last year. So players played in one game, some players, and he got pushed around in that game where he felt that he did. I thought he played fine, but he said it really motivated him to improve his strength, improve his speed, his quickness. And he did. He goes out like we didn't drag him through a number of different showcases or tournaments or, like some of the other leagues do with their players. We want to pick our players early and we want them to focus on training. And he did that. And that is directly why he is committing to Endicott College, and where he had a number of top 15 schools that were recruiting him because of how hard he trained, how seriously he took it. And he was a phenomenal teammate. He was our captain. He's a guy that had no problem calling or texting me and saying, hey, we need a day, or we need you either to back off, or he also knew when he wanted us to push harder. So really just gets it. We're going to miss him. You could tell when he was out of our lineup, he had 2 separate injuries this year. When he was out of our lineup, we really struggled. So I guess if we went back to the question you had asked earlier, why did we do so well? It was Dom Metro. We went as Dom went.
Yeah. So it was a younger team though this year, this past season, not a ton of O2s. So any returners we should expect, or guys from the premier team that are earmarked to potentially make a jump?
Yeah, we've got a number. We're pretty lucky with that, so we don't have to go out and get a ton of players. But up front, we've got guys like Josh Bells, Christian Worrell, that'll be making returns. On the back end, Roden Robinson and let's see, who else do we have here? Caden Connors in net. Grayson Payne is coming back. And then coming up from Premier are a quartet of players. Anthony Bellew, who was one of the best goalies in the Premier League last year. Eric Toto. We have Colin Gorman, who was their captain and best defensive forward, as well as Will O'Keefe. So 4 players coming up from the Premier team that we're very excited about. And, we haven't finalized the process yet, but anywhere from 6 to 10 returners from EHL.
And all 4 of those guys you mentioned got to dabble in some EHL action this year. So what did you see out of them when they had to step up and play in the big club?
Well, we'll start with Anthony, in the net. And, Anthony's an undersized goalie coming right out of the MIAA at Austin Prep. And, he showed no fear. It never bothered. We played him against some serious competition. He played, winning record at the EHL level, which is an accomplishment for an 04 goalie. So, just absolute fearlessness in the drive. He's got the same type of drive to get better as Dom Metro does. He is at the ring constantly. Anyone calls him or texts him to go on the ice to take shots, if he doesn't have work or a school or a family commitment, he's there. It is a guarantee. On defense, Eric Toto is one of the best natural skaters I've ever coached in 23 years. You're going to see him next year. He absolutely flies. And we gave him a very long leash. We allowed him to make a ton of mistakes, more so than we probably should have, but we didn't want to just beat the offense out of him. We didn't want to turn him into a defensive robot. We want him to be creative. We want him to get that experience of when to take the puck and when not to. And he really got that. So and even next year at the EHL level, he'll be one of the best skaters in the entire league. And then up front, Will O'Keefe and Colin Gorman, 2 different types of players. Colin Gorman is your, meat and potatoes, penalty killing, shot blocking centerman, phenomenal leader, phenomenal young man. And Will O'Keefe, every time we called him up, he scored points. We probably should have kept him up for the playoffs, but we didn't want to deplete the Premier team. We had already taken Matt Devon from them earlier. So, from an organizational standpoint of view, we did keep him on the Premiers, but, my instinct and the whole time every time I thought about it, I wanted to call him up permanently, and he did that good of a job.
And so to move the focus away from Valley to a little bit and more to you a Massachusetts native, grew up in Reading, still very much involved with the Reading program. Is that correct?
Yes. I actually got to speak at their banquet the other night, which was really fun. I hadn't been to one since I finished coaching there 20 years ago.
And what can you tell us about the ZHL?
The ZHL is a group of Reading guys. About 75% are Reading natives that played either Reading youth hockey or Reading high school hockey that still live in the area. And we got together a bunch of years ago at the direction of Sean Collins, our Premier head coach, who kind of is the de facto leader of our alumni group. And we wanted to get together and play in a men's league. Most of us had played in a lot of the area leagues, and at some point or another, it gets out of hand. You got players that still think they're, winning the Stanley Cup. You got guys that are, forget that everyone has jobs or families. So we wanted good hockey, but we didn't want any BS. And, Sean got everyone together. He got the ice time at Burbank Arena, and we started with 2 teams, and we're now at 4. So it's April, May, and June, which also works out incredibly well for me. I don't like to play during the year, but it's at the end of the year. And now it's evolved into something more than just hockey. We do a ton of philanthropic work. We donate to some families in need that are associated with Reading hockey, the Skate for 22 Foundation. We do make a significant donation to the Friends of Reading Hockey every year, and a few others. So it's become one of a great situation. And also our networking. You've got 52 adult males this year. There's 13 players per team times 4 teams, and everyone. We have an accountant, we have a financial services guy, we have a real estate agent, we have probably every career you can imagine. We have a bunch of former military. So the networking is unbelievable. Someone loses a job, they can get their resume out to 52 guys with one press of a button. So it's been really rewarding and a lot of fun. We do have some fun.
How many guys are still involved in hockey, just out of curiosity?
Let's see. So obviously Sean Collins is in the league. He's our premier head coach. Chris Diamond is in the league. He this year runs successful hockey schools as well as he is the volunteer assistant at Bentley. Brendan Clark is in the league. Brendan just finished a 14-year stint as the New England scout for the New York Rangers. We've got about 4 big-time employees from Bauer that run the Northeast division of that company. So we've got a few other guys that coach at the high school level or midget or prep school level, and of course, almost all of these guys are coaching their kids now. So everyone's involved in hockey one way, shape, or another. But those are some of the bigger names that we have.
So when you were playing, like competitively, you were a top 10 blue liner according to Redline Report. So what was your style of play when you were out there?
Well, I played in the Eastern Junior Hockey League, rest in peace. And it was back then it was a very top heavy league. The top 2 or 3 teams were very good, and then the bottom 2 or 3 teams weren't. And I was on one of those teams in Tingsboro, but it was a very physical league at the time, and we had the same referees that did us every night, and they were pretty liberal about letting the guys play. And I was a very physical player. I would not be able to play in today's game. I would not be able to play in the Eastern Hockey League today. I don't have the skill or the skating to be able to do that. And but I was shot blocking. I would go out. I was pardon my French, but I was a shit disturber. Kind of like a Marchand type, but just a stay-at-home dumb defenseman.
Yeah. So when you made the transition to coaching, your first gig in junior hockey was the Cyclones of the Met JHL, and then with the Pirates of the AJ and the Met. So how different was junior hockey, do you think, 15 years ago?
Well, it was very similar. As there were two basic leagues in New England, just like there is now. Back then it was the Atlantic Junior League and the Eastern Junior Hockey League. The Eastern Junior Hockey League had been around a little bit longer. The Atlantic Junior League came as a result of the teams that were in the Met Junior League wanted to be able to push their players to a higher level. The Met was then a Junior B League and had been the longest operating Junior B League in the U.S. So, and they made their way into New England. So there was 2 predominant leagues that, of course, competed over players and competed over bragging rights. And so in that respect, it really hasn't changed. But there was less teams than there are today, and so it was, and there was a lot more travel. Like when we were in the Atlantic Junior League, we would routinely go down to, play what was the Washington Junior Nationals or the New York Bobcats or the Philly Little Flyers, Philly Junior Flyers, teams of that nature. So you were either home for a Saturday night, Sunday morning, or you were on the road for a Saturday night, Sunday morning. So it was a lot more travel. That's the one thing I like now is we have so little travel where we can spend more time focused on training, more time in the gym, more time on the ice, less time in a bus, less time in a hotel.
Yeah. Did you always plan on coaching or sticking around hockey in general?
I wasn't going to. I actually thought I was going to be a police officer when I was that age, and I just started coaching at Reading High School at night while I was attending community college, and that is when junior hockey started to explode. So I actually got my first paying gig. I was the head coach of the North Reading junior varsity team. Frank Golden, who was one of my mentors, and is now currently a scout for the Vancouver Canucks, was an assistant at Reading, got the head varsity job at North Reading, and then took me with them a year later to start their JV team. And then I coached a midget team called the New England Jaguars. It was when the 88s were first-year midgets and the 89s were second-year Bantams. And it was half Reading kids, half Malden Catholic kids. And actually, Pat Gigante, our strength coach, was one of the other coaches on that team. And we barnstormed New England and played 40 games from Labor Day to Thanksgiving and got those kids ready for high school. So it was right after that when I got the gig with the Cyclones as junior hockey was exploding in New England.
So then after juniors for you, it was college hockey. You spent a decade between Wentworth and UMass Boston. You were assistant coach for both, recruiting coordinator for both. So what was it like for you adjusting from juniors to college?
It was well, getting the job at UMass Boston under Pete Lyle was one of the greatest humans, regardless of hockey or not, out there. He was awesome. and he truly helped me adjust to the college game and the recruiting that, I'd done some recruiting with the Cyclones and with the Portland Junior Pirates, but not to the point where you needed to at the college level. And really, you're watching players all year long before you make a decision. Where, back then at the junior, you might go to the Chowder Cup and watch a kid for a weekend and make a decision on him, which can lead to mistakes, and often does. So it was truly, developing a year-long process of how to recruit and evaluate players to best fill our holes that we needed. And then, and the other challenge, and I speak to it often with our players, is at some point during their college years, most of these players, their priorities will change. And they'll start to think less about hockey, more about school, more about their career, more about, grad school or, whatever their post-college career is going to be. And, I learned there to just keep them involved, keep them engaged, and at Wentworth, that was really prevalent where kids choose Wentworth more for academics than they do for hockey. Right. They go in there, they're career oriented. You have to pick your major when you apply. You don't choose after your sophomore year. You get right into your major. And, the high end engineer students, come exam time, there was no chance we were going to have practices or games because they were so stressed out and so focused. So, learning to really, just allow our players to love hockey in its purest form, but within their priorities of academics and family and religion and whatever else. Because in junior hockey, they're pretty much just hockey players. But in college hockey, they have a lot of other things on their plate. And at UMass Boston, I made some mistakes where I didn't always respect that. And at Wentworth, I really learned that you have to respect that, or these players aren't going to play for you.
So does that notion of, having to focus on the other things outside of hockey, does that, is that part of your message with your junior hockey players today?
It truly is we, our goal at Valley, we love NCAA commitments, don't get me wrong, right? But our goal at Valley is we want our players to achieve their goals, right? And it's not my goal. I don't push our players to go anywhere. I want them to be the decision maker and I want them to be the driver behind it. But we tell them all the time, you're going to be in 5 classes. You're going to be on campus. You're going to be involved on campus. You're going to be getting involved in different clubs or organizations, for networking. You're also going to be social. You're going to be going to parties and meeting girls and doing different things of that nature. So, hockey is just one part of the puzzle or one piece of the puzzle in college. And, you truly have to spread your efforts amongst all. And really, in Division II and Division III, hockey should be your second or third most important priority, as academics has to be number one. And obviously networking and career focus should be probably number 2, and then hockey should be number 3. And we talk to our guys about it all the time. That's why I never want a player to say, "Oh, I'll just go whoever recruits me." No, you want to go where you can achieve all of your academic goals, and set yourself up for whatever your post-college plan is.
And when you were involved in college hockey and evaluating junior players, what were some things that you looked for?
We wanted to be hard to play against. You want guys that compete the entire 60 minutes and the entire 200 feet of the ice. First and foremost, there are some sexy players out there that can do, that are good at one or two things, but don't have a high compete level. And in the 2 conferences that I worked in, obviously UMass Boston was then in the ECAC East, but it turned into the NEHC. Obviously a very difficult conference that has even gotten more difficult with the addition of Hobart and Elmira and so on and so forth. And at Wentworth, we were in the CCC, the Commonwealth Coast Conference. And just like this year, my first year at Wentworth, 3 teams from that league made the NCAA tournament. Same thing happening in this year. So when you're playing UNE and Salve Regina and Endicott and back Nichols and Curry were getting really good as well. It's no joke. Like every single night is an absolute battle. So you need guys that can compete.
So you also, in the early 2010s, worked at the state and national level, director of player development for Mass Hockey, which involved selecting players for the USA Hockey Development Festivals. So how different was that just as a change of pace for you?
Well, it was great because it was in the spring. It was when the season was over, and it was a great way for me to kind of get to know the younger players because So for USA Hockey at the time when I first started, they still had the 14 camp. They've since eliminated the 14 national camp, and they've made them regional camps because they want more players involved. But we're evaluating and selecting players for the 15, 16, and 17 national camps. As Massachusetts is a direct to national camp state, just like Minnesota, Michigan, and New York, where most of the other states you have to get out of your state and you have to go to a regional camp before you can make it to national camp. So it's a great way to get to know the younger players. And the process of where Mass Hockey was before was not going so well. It was an old boys network, and there was, some of the wrong players who were sent. And USA Hockey actually stepped in and forced Mass Hockey to change everything that they did. And the president at the time, Carrie Ann Allen, really just handed me the keys to the castle, because I was, at the time, I had done Rocky Mountain District. I had done, a bunch of stuff for Maine, Rhode Island, Florida, Texas. So I got to go to all these other, in the New England district, I got to go to all these other districts and take what they do well and what I liked and brought it back to Mass. And, I'm very proud to say that Paul Pearl now has the position that I had, and, he's tweaked it a little bit, but it's basically the same process, and they're doing a great job of selecting the right players.
How long were you spending time outside of New England when you were working in Florida and those other places, and Rockies too?
So you go out for like a long weekend, which is difficult. And I did the Arizona development camp for a number of years. It was always Easter weekend, but you'd go out, you'd do Arizona camp, you do Rocky Mountain camp. Florida was another one. They always try to make it in conjunction with the ACHA, right? AHCA convention in Naples, so it kind of made it easy. But every year, you try to do as many as you could within reason.
Was it tough, the different styles of hockey, having to deal with that? Because obviously, we hear from the players at the combines who come from all over how different it is up here in New England versus anywhere else.
Yes and no. I mean, at the end of the day, a hockey player is a hockey player, and if we use college hockey as our benchmark, right? That's the background that I was coming from. You're just telling these players, hey, this is where you're at now, and this is where you need to get if you want to play college hockey. So, I found it, in some of the non-traditional markets, like in Arizona, we had Austin Matthews on the ice as a 15-year-old, right before he went to the national team development program, and he was so ridiculously skilled. I coached him in one game, and I think he must have had 11 goals. And he came off afterwards. He's like, Coach, what could I have done better? He was so, but the skill level of those Arizona kids was incredibly high because they come from that roller hockey background. The same thing in Florida, where in New England, there's a lot more physicality, right? You'd see a lot more kids that maybe didn't have that high-end skill, but they had no problem going through you.
And so obviously your path winded up back here in junior hockey. So how did you end up back in the juniors game with the Warriors?
Well, the whole time I was working at UMass Boston Wentworth, I got to know Andy Hines very well. Andy's a friend and now a mentor. I had no idea that he was retiring. We had been playing phone tag because we were actually we were recruiting a player at Wentworth that he was promoting, and he finally shot me a text because we just couldn't connect. We kept playing phone tag and missing each other. He finally shot me a text. He said, "I'm retiring, and I want to put together a short list of candidates for the owners, and you're a guy that I would love to consider taking this job." And I was very honored. I tried to play it cool and not like be too excited, but I had my resume updated within a half an hour, and and over to the Gilmartins and met with them within the next 48 hours to express my interest in the job.
And all throughout your hockey career, you primarily stuck around Massachusetts and New England. Is there any specific reason for that? Is it home for you, or is it just where the opportunities were?
It is. I went for some jobs elsewhere. I had actually applied for a job in Italy one year, and Jamie Dumont, the former Bowdoin coach, was actually the pro coach in a place called Bolzano in northern Italy, and they had advertised they wanted a junior coach, and I was single at the time, and I thought, I didn't have any family, didn't have any kids, and this is great, like, why not go see the world? I didn't get the job, but I didn't have a relationship with Jamie at the time, and since then, he's told me a few times that he regrets not hiring me because it would have been a fun year. But other than that, I mean, there's been a few opportunities, but nothing that got me excited enough to to get out of here. And obviously my family all lives in the Boston area, and it's and now my wife's family lives on Cape Cod and in Vermont and Massachusetts. So we're here. We're New Englanders at heart, and unless something crazy happens, I don't see myself going anywhere.
So now looking at this upcoming season with Valley, what do you enjoy most about the summer and recruiting season?
So I'll tell you, and I have no problem admitting this, the 9 years that I coached college, when the season would end, I would almost go into like a seasonal depression. I would get that like spring depression where if I wasn't running practice or I wasn't going to a game or I wasn't recruiting, I didn't know what value I brought to the world. And I would go into a shell almost every spring. And when I got this job, after I got through the first year, which was a pretty tough year, I was able to press the reset button, and it's the best. It's actually, outside of coaching the team, is the season I love the most, because it's where we get to figure out how we're going to get better. I don't care if we win a championship and we get 25 guys to college, we're going to try to figure out a way to do it better. In my opinion, the most successful people that I know, the people that have been mentors to me, are never satisfied. They're never complacent. They're always trying to find a better way to make it work. So, and with the help of Michael Clardy and Sean Collins and, our former coaches, Brett Heigl and Matt Moreschi, we get to sit down and say, okay, how can we make this program better from top to bottom, whether it's our facilities, our scheduling, the way we train, the way we coach, the way we do video, the way we recruit, the way we dress, the way we look. Right now we're designing next year's uniforms, and we're collaborating with Brigham Builders and Wrap Solutions to renovate our locker room, which is going to be, it's needed. Our locker room's 15 years old. We got a beautiful space, but it just needed some updates. So this is my favorite time of the year now, because we're able to get better. And it's the recruiting season. We're recruiting all year. But, right before this call, I had just gone and met with a potential goaltender and a parent, and they said right to me, it's so evident how passionate you are about this. It's just oozing out of you. I could talk about our program and the season and the expectations, no problem. My wife actually jokes around that she can give the pitch because she's heard it so many times, and she actually does a pretty good job at it. I told her if she keeps it up, I'm going to use her on recruiting calls. But it's a great time of the year to, and pro hockey is getting hot. So I never watch pro during the year because I'm so kind of hockeyed out, but now it's a great time to focus on the Bruins, and hopefully they can get by Florida tomorrow in Game 7. It doesn't look great though. So it has become almost my second favorite time of the year, where I used to be so scared of when the season ended because I just hated not running practices and coaching games.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that with how quickly everything just stops. Like you're at your busiest season and then it's just over. So a new division for you guys next year, joining the North, the division that you guys beat every team in last year at a different point. So how do you keep that trend going when standings matter more against them?
We're psyched. We wanted to go to the North. I mean, I love the guys in the East, but I want to play against the best teams every single night. It's the way I was brought up, my whole life, even at Reading High School, people would always complain there should be two separate state tournaments, right? One for the publics, one for the Catholics. And we were always in disagreement with that. We want to play the best teams. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the 4 teams in the North. And I can't wait to battle them every single day. And it's going to force us to be better. It's going to force us to be better coaches. It's going to force us to have better players, and no slight against the teams in the East, because they're no slouch either. Like and it really doesn't change our schedule much. Like we won't play as many Central teams, except for the showcases. But now it's going to be a grind from August 27th to hopefully March 25th or 26th, whenever Championship Sunday is.
Absolutely, Coach. We're looking forward to seeing it. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy your upcoming vacation.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you guys do. It's the Hockey Night crew is, as when we go on the road, I want to hang out with you guys because you're my favorite people. And I don't think anyone works harder than you guys. So keep it up.
And we appreciate that. And honestly, there's probably no one we want to hang out with either. So.
Come on. All right. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to The E Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.